Good morning, everybody. It's so good to see some of you live. It's Kat here with our first live stream of 2025 of the Adventure Paradox podcast. If you've been following along and listening, you know that we have some rebranding coming up. So I recognized that a lot of folks don't know who we're talking to. And a principle in business is that you're always talking to yourself 5 years ago. So where was I 5 years ago? Where were you 5 years ago? That was the year of the pandemic. That was the year of you didn't even know what was coming and how your life was going to change. And the truth is, the principle of uncertainty is always with us. We actually never really know what's going to happen. And I've been thinking a lot about moms and caretakers, and this is really who I speak to, regardless of your age. My children, you can see these beautiful photographs we have in the background of them holding one of our puppies when it was only 5 weeks old. And we are really hardwired to care for each other, to love and serve. And I believe that motherhood is such a privilege and such a beautiful space to go really deep into what it means to care for and love and serve and just really cuddle. And so I've been thinking about a lot of the principles that come up for moms or caretakers, specifically of animals or other loved ones, because I was an animal caretaker before I was a mom. And we are rebranding to Mom's Adventure Paradox because so much of what we're talking about is the adventure of motherhood itself and then the paradoxes that go along with it. So today we're going to talk about the principle of rest. This came through for me so loud and clear. I realized I need to speak on it. And yesterday was Martin Luther King Jr. Day. If you've been following our podcast for a while or following me for a while, you know that I am a huge MLK Jr. fan, and every year I do a tribute. But yesterday, honestly, I was really tired. My kids were home, everything was kind of a little bit off, and I realized I just needed a rest day. Rest is a four-letter word. I'm going to tell you something very funny, and we'll do some posts about this. Thank you, Target, Jackson Hole, for having a mannequin in a running position in your workout wear area wearing a sweatshirt that says rest day. You're like running through your rest day. And I took a photograph of it because it felt like this is our culture. This is what we do. This is what we moms do. I saw a video, you've probably seen this one, it's super cute, but it says something like, when mama just needs a break. She's wearing this like huge, puffy trench coat. She walks through the door and then she climbs up on the door with the trench coat over her and puts her feet on the handles and hides like a bat. Sometimes it's on a banister. This one was on a door. And then her kids all walk by and it just says when mama needs a break, right? When you're hiding, maybe from your responsibilities, from the caretaking, it might be because you have forgotten that principle of rest, of just chilling. When I watch our animals, especially in winter, and if you're watching me today, you see I have this really nice fuzzy hat on. When I watch our animals in winter, they rest so much more. And yesterday, we had our first sub-zero temperature, and a lot of people across the country did. So I hope you stayed warm, and I hope nothing froze and cracked on you. Again, the paradoxes. But when I went out to care for the animals, I was paying attention to how I respond and how they respond to sub-zero temperatures. And I realized there's like a hurriedness that comes in. I want to move faster to stay warm. But the truth is, the cold actually calls for a deep stillness. And it's fascinating because sound moves differently in the cold. The place in the world, by the way, where you have the most incredible silence that you can possibly capture is in Antarctica. Wow. Why? So cold. What happens to sound in the cold? What happens to my body? What happens to my spirit? What happens to my mind in the cold? And again, my brain is telling me, I've got to move through this quickly so I get back inside so that I don't get too cold. My body is telling me, take it easy. And you know what? At the very end of, I think I spent about 40 minutes outside. At the very end of it, I was in a little bit of a hurry and I was throwing a piece of trash away and I hit my head. I was wearing a brim cap on the gooseneck trailer pretty hard. It's actually feeling better today. But at that moment, I sort of saw stars and I went inside and I realized I was really bypassing that principle of rest. And when I watch the animals, especially the horses who live outside, they pause a lot more. And part of why we got out there yesterday was to help them move so that they don't colic, to keep their tummies going and get out in the snow a little bit. So the paradox here is that you must rest. Yes, it's a four-letter word, but you also must rise. That's actually very fitting. Every year I think about a different MLK quote, and I'm going to actually share the one that I'm always talking about, but I just had an epiphany about another story that I want to share today. So when MLK Jr. was giving his I Have a Dream speech. Most people know this. I Have a Dream is not actually the speech he had written down. This often happens. This is part of why I don't work with notes. I know I have a point. I know what we're going to talk about today, but I'm not reading off a script because to me, that loses the art of oration and the art of talking and the art of really letting your mind connect to your mouth and your thoughts and letting it come out. So when Martin Luther King Jr. got up and he's giving this huge speech and he has it all written out, it was really scripted. And the audience had so much tension. I think there were like 10,000 people, don't quote me on that, but a really, really large group of people here. And he looked out over the audience, and Mahalia Jackson, who was a friend of his and a singer, was somewhere in the front. And she said, Martin, tell him about the dream. And as soon as she said that, it prompted him to go straight into the oration, what was coming through from his soul, from his heart. He just started to speak, to truly speak, not to read something, but to speak. Ah, and if you listen to it and you play back, this is for me part of why podcasting and conversation is so powerful, is because it doesn't always happen when you're by yourself. It happens when you have an exchange with an audience. Hello, audience, I see you there. Thank you for listening. So Martin Luther King started sharing, I have a dream, because his friend prompted him from the audience saying, tell him about the dream. This is beautiful. And that dream to me, and any dream, and here we are going into New Year's resolutions, right? It's about your vision. It's about where you see that you could go. It's the promised land, right? It's not necessarily about where you are. It's about where you see that you could go. And I feel like that comes into the principle of rise, where you rise up and you're going to move towards that. And I'm thinking today about Maya Angelou's beautiful poem, Rise. I think it might be called Rise Up, but in it, I rise, I rise, I rise. And the historical story I'm thinking of today is Rosa Parks. And she's sitting on the bus and she's in rest. And it was actually a kind of rising up that she would not get out of her seat because of that principle of rest. And I think so often we think rest is a four-letter word in our culture, that we can't rest. And the truth is, if you don't rest, you will be leveled at some point. You're either going to get sick, right? Or maybe you're going to get mentally sick. You've got anxiety or depression to deal with, right? Or spiritually sick. There's an argument that those might also be spiritual, right? Emotional, because you're not taking the time to really listen to the principles of what your body, your mind, your spirit need to take care of yourself. And sometimes it is rest, and sometimes it is time to rise up and change something or do something or say something. Like I'm saying something today. I had a moment yesterday. It was at the end of the day. Children were playing at a neighbor's. My husband was picking up some skis somewhere, and the house was quiet. I had about an hour. And I thought, I could do the podcast right now. I could go and do the podcast. And then I realized, if what I'm speaking on are these principles, if what I want to share with the world and help people with are these principles of the mom's adventure paradox, there's no way that this is a moment for me to go and share from this place of deep rest. I'm really tired. That said, there are moments where I'm in that space and I get the call. Just like Mahalia Jackson said, tell me about the dream. When I get that call, I feel like it is a spiritual moment, a spiritual connection. I check in. Am I supposed to take this call right now for whatever reason and be of service? Most of the time, the answer is yes. Every now and then, the answer is no. I need to sleep 15 more minutes and then call them back, for example. So I really want you to meditate on this rest versus rise paradox. Where are you in it? Have you been rising up, rising up, rising up in this season of hibernation in winter? Do you keep asking yourself to show up for this and show up for that and parties and so on and so forth? Or have you been deep in rest? Maybe you need that. Maybe your rest day is not running like the mannequin at Target. Maybe you truly need deep, healing, soulful rest. Just thinking about it is good. I remember coming back from physical therapy and I was going through a really deep knee injury. And my physical therapist, I hope we'll get her on the podcast because she's an amazing teacher. She said to me, you know, they've done studies to show that if you just think about your muscles getting bigger, they get bigger. Actually doesn't even matter if you work a heavier weight. So if you just think about the principle of rest, about the principle of rising up and following whatever dream is coming through for you right now. But you don't get the dream unless you get the sleep, which comes from the rest. Do you see how this is all connected? So I have a new course coming out. It's going to be the Mom's Adventure Paradox signature course. So stay tuned. It's coming soon. We will have a pre-sale. If you're interested in the pre-sale, please use the text me in the show notes and let me know you're interested. We would love to have you be part of this. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Tuesday and transform whatever might be going on with you through rest or through rising up, because you might need to take action, right? Your action might be sitting in your seat and saying, I'm not moving from here, like Rosa Parks did, right? To thine own self be true. Thank you so much for listening. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. And 2025 has had a lot going on so far. I just want to say I have friends and family lost homes in LA, and my heart is with you. And there's a lot of healing and rebuilding already happening in 3 weeks of 2025. So again, looking back at where we were 5 years ago, thinking about where we might be 5 years from now, take it easy on yourself. Don't forget that principle of rest. Love you. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope you enjoy this mini-sode. More coming this year. Bye-bye.